joining us today. I'm really excited about bringing Smart Growth's Complete Streets to our city, and I hope that you will get as much out of it as I plan on getting out of it. Just real quick, some of the necessities. Full disclosure, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to the Metro Nashville YouTube channel for viewing. If you would not like to be recorded, please hop off the webinar at this time. So I am excited to introduce everyone to Dustin Robertson with Smart Growth. He is actually going to be leading us in the beginning of this presentation. Dustin, thank you for joining us today, and I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. It's great to see you all here today. This is really encouraging to see such a good turnout, and even more people are joining. You know, what we find when it comes to working in, complete streets and anything in this area is the more people, the better. The more numbers and also diversity, people from different parts of the government, people from civil society, people, decision makers, policy leaders, business. The more people you have working together on this, the better. The best policies and the best implementation come when you've really got a lot of buy-in from a lot of different folks. And I'm really encouraged to see that we're starting off on that foot. So just to give a real quick reminder, this is the first of what will be 4 sessions that we're going to be hosting over the next few months. And we're going to cover a range of topics related to complete streets. For some of you, this may be this may be your daily job and it'll be review for you. For others, it may be some new concepts and ideas. I hope that everybody will have some things they can take away from it. I'm going to give a presentation, and after that, I'm going to leave some space for some discussion questions. You can ask me. If you want to ask somebody else in the room, maybe we can facilitate that conversation. But I think that, as Director Alicorn said, I hope that everybody's going to be able to, take away a lot from this discussion. Here is a basic picture to just kind of get our imagination flowing about what a complete street might look like. And we're going to see some real photos as we go along, though. So just to give some ground setting, we are Smart Growth America. We really work on all things land use and transportation. We think that all people, no matter where they live or who they are, have a right to live in a healthy, prosperous community. And we work on that in a lot of different ways. And the way that we're talking about today is through complete streets and what that entails. So what are complete streets? You may have heard this term, or it may be completely new for you. First of all, I want to, have you all look at this photo and tell me what's going on here. This is something that we see, and some, a cynical interpretation is, oh, well, somebody's being risky or somebody is taking chances. Well, what SGA sees is this is a street network that is failing a woman and child, right? And we think this is not the kind of society that we should be building or living in. And so today we're going to be talking about a different vision of that. To give some important alarming numbers that some of you may be familiar with is, we're talking about safety in our streets. The rates of pedestrian fatalities have gone up in this country steadily over the last few years. And this is particularly alarming as driving rates went down in a lot of places during the pandemic. So 2020, 2021, 2022, there were actually less cars on the road, and yet pedestrian fatalities continued to go up quite a lot. You see there 75% increase in deaths of people walking since 2010. So this is some of the reason that we should care about how our streets are working and for whom. The other reason, beyond just the stark numbers that we see, it's also an important to look at this situation from a perspective of equity. So, lots of people are being harmed and killed in our roads, but it's not even across all, demographics. So here you see racial divides in terms of pedestrian fatalities. You see people of color are far more likely to be harmed or killed while walking than white non-Hispanic population. It's also, not even across all age groups. So pedestrian fatalities are much more, prevalent among higher age groups. So you see, as people 65 and above have much more elevated rates, really 50 and above, much elevated rates in relation to people 20 to 49. So those are some alarming statistics. This is what it looks like on the ground, beyond just the numbers of the scary numbers of the way things are. This is what it looks like if you've not ridden a bicycle or walked down an average street in America lately. This is all too common. These are a couple of intersections. Honestly, I'm not even sure where we got this footage from, but it could be applicable to just about any city or town in America. I think that all of you would recognize a place like this, and you can just see some of the signs. There's no crosswalk, very limited shoulder space there for a car or a bicycle or someone in a wheelchair who uses a wheelchair like myself. It's really not a hospitable environment for anyone outside of a car. And even for those in the car, it's not a particularly comfortable or pleasant place to be. So these are some of the reasons that we think about, that we need to really talk about doing things in a different way. One more angle that's particularly important in relation to a state like Tennessee is that the most dangerous places are some like the ones that just showed here, are often the arterial state-owned roads. So this is a photo from Memphis, from a video that we recently did there. And you can see a disproportionate amount of pedestrian fatalities occur on state-owned roads. So that's 66% of all pedestrian fatalities in Tennessee occur on state-owned roads. And that's why, as I said, it's really important it's not just one agency, one government department, one stakeholder who can solve this. To really solve the issues of road safety and better streets, it takes the state, it takes city, it takes civil society, it takes businesses, everybody working together. You can just look at this photo and see what's going on here. We've got huge, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7-lane road, or 8, with no crosswalks, but you've got housing, it looks like on both sides, maybe a school. You've got some businesses as well. So there are definitely people in the area who are going to want to walk, to get places, but they can't do so in a safe way. And you can just see the cloud of cars traveling in our direction as the one solitary person waits in the middle. So again, this is a photo from Memphis, but I'm sure we can find plenty in any city or town in any state across the country, frankly. So what are complete streets? I asked at the beginning. Well, here's the answer. Complete streets are streets for everyone, right? And everyone here is bold and underlined because we want to think about everyone in all senses. The definition that we use at Smart Growth America is complete streets, an approach to planning, designing, building, operating, and maintaining streets that enables safe access for all people who need to use them. This includes pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders of all ages and abilities. So, in this country, in the recent decades, last half century or so, we've had a very narrow focus on designing for private automobiles. We design streets to move vehicles quickly from place to place, and other considerations such as safety, such as, climate, other things have really taken the, secondary role to the object of moving vehicles. And for anyone outside of the vehicle, you have, a situation like this, right? So we really are saying that we need to think about all people who live or travel through an area. What are their needs and how can we accommodate them? Here's a simple graphic that we use. Over here on the left, we see a photo that's, an image that's similar to the one we saw before. Wide lanes, no pedestrian facilities, no consideration for bicycles, nowhere to cross. On the right, something that is a lot more accommodating for different types of users. But of course, it's going to look different in different places. This is just a sort of sample illustration. Here's a few more different ways of what complete streets can look like. So on the left, we have a photograph. You see here again, you've got bicycle facilities that are separated from cars. We've got some benches and places for pedestrians to walk or perhaps wait for the bus. We've got signals in all directions, signals for bicycles, and you've got crosswalks, things like that. Over on the right, you see some more of these features. Even though we've got many lanes of travel, there's still accommodating quite a few cars here. But still, there are some considerations that have been made. We have pedestrian islands, so people are not having to cross 6 lanes all at once. They're crossing, 2 or 3 lanes. We've got protected lane for bicycles, infrastructure for people taking transit, etc. So these are, looks like for Manhattan. Just to be clear, complete streets is an approach, and it's going to look a little different depending on your community. So we're not trying to say, this is the model, this is the blueprint, do this, right? Every place needs to think about who lives in their communities, who needs to get where, and try to accommodate them in a safe and healthy manner. So complete streets and Vision Zero. This is a sort of one of the frequently asked questions that we get a lot. And I know that Nashville has recently passed complete streets policy, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. And they also have done a lot of work on Vision Zero. And some people ask, well, is there a conflict? Is it Vision Zero or complete streets? Is there some sort of a tension between them? I'll say, I want to clarify, complete streets and Vision Zero are compatible, and many cities have embraced both with positive results, right? So it is not an either or, it's not some sort of rivalry in any way. The National Complete Streets Coalition has formally endorsed Vision Zero. So at Smart Growth America, we say, yes, absolutely Vision Zero. And they have a lot in common. So both Complete Streets and Vision Zero prioritize safety over speed, recommend improvements to street design, and also equity. However, Complete Streets also has a focus beyond just safety, which is really the primary focus of Vision Zero. Complete Streets includes other goals, priorities, and benefits such as climate, land use, and economic development. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those in the coming slides. So just to be clear, there's no conflict between Complete Streets and Vision Zero. There's no beef there. So you can totally do both. And in many cases, we advise that you do. And that's, sort of double protection on the safety, as well as if you do Complete Streets and do it well, you get a lot of other benefits as well. So some of the benefits that I just alluded to, for some of these it might be a review, but others might not have thought about it in exactly this way. So health. So obviously, the deaths and fatalities, injuries, things like that, that's a clear and obvious negative consequence of having a car-centric transportation system. But other things as well. We find a strong overlap of car dependency and other, non-communicable diseases, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, as well as some mental health issues such as depression, isolation. These kinds of things really go along with having a completely car-centered society where people can't complete trips by walking. They can't walk to a grocery store. They can't walk to their work or to school. The only way to get around is by car. So if you increase the pedestrian infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, access to public transit, you can also lead to healthier, more pleasant neighborhoods and society as well. Safety, that's one of the things that I talked about a little bit before. So obviously, if we build protected facilities, we can protect people walking, biking, and really promote other types of travel that can be safe. The other thing that both Vision Zero and Complete Streets really emphasize is the importance of speed. Street design is important, but speed is, they go hand in hand. Speed is the, overwhelmingly the determining factor when it comes to outcomes, fatality outcomes in traffic incidents and collisions, crashes. So reduced speed on roads can reduce the number of accidents that occur, and it'll also, reduce the severity of crashes when they occur. Economics. So this is one that we get asked a lot, where's the money going to come from? How are we going to pay for, how are we going to pay for Complete Streets? How are we going to do things? We're stretched thin already, as it is. We can't, this is going to destroy our economy or, hurt local businesses. This is one that we have found in our research, and other researchers have found overwhelmingly the benefits here outweigh the negatives, right? So economics, one basic obvious, cost savings is to society more broadly, crashes are expensive to property and to, people's lives. If you reduce those, there's savings in multiple areas. But beyond that, we also emphasize the concept of transit-oriented development. This is a concept you may be familiar with, and I've seen some instances of it in Nashville, but there's nowhere in the country that I think has completely, taken full advantage of this concept. Some places are starting to embrace it, but I think there's a lot more to be gained there. Transit-oriented development means basically you develop, your cities and towns around transportation rather than making transportation match the way things are already developed, right? If you put in, bus stops or metro rails in certain, or metro stops in certain places, and strategically, build your businesses, build, housing around them, you can really create thriving, productive, communities that are really centered around different types of transportation rather than just highways that connect people and, from a suburb to a downtown or something like that. This is a photo from Washington, D.C., where I live, of a very vibrant neighborhood that's really centered around, it's above a metro stop, there are hotels, there's housing, there's baseball stadium, restaurants, coffee shops, bars, etc. And you can really create these, thriving places where people can travel in large numbers without, having huge sprawling parking lots, for example. And in terms of the actual businesses, that's what I said. That's something that we hear a lot is, oh, well, you're going to, change parking in my area. My business is going to suffer. Well, we find, we point to evidence from different types of research that, people walking, people taking, traveling with bikes often spend more when they do shop. It can also, be an important attractor to neighborhoods. People like to go to nice walkable, bikeable areas. So you can really, in most cases, do better from a business perspective by embracing Complete Streets approach. Other improvements you can see in terms of employment or in terms of, land values, et cetera. So there are a lot of economic benefits there. to doing complete streets. And we find if you're willing to take, maybe, you take some chances and do things a little bit differently than they've been done in the past, the benefits can be very significant in a lot of different ways. Environment. This is one that you may have also been thinking about as as we think about pollution, we think about climate emissions. Transportation is the biggest or one of the biggest sectors across all sources. Yes, and if we have less vehicles, people getting around, alternate forms of transportation, biking, walking, cycling, taking public transit, you're going to have less emissions, less pollutions, etc. And they can also, these are going to be increasingly important to have elements like this. Here we see lots of trees, green space. That's also going to help with things like stormwater management as we see more intense storms over the coming decades. Congestion. This is another one that we often hear. It's like, oh, well, if you change the lanes, you're just going to snarl traffic. Or if we take away some, if we reduce this or reduce that, then people are not going to be able to get around. This is one that I think, it may make sense if you're only thinking about it from the window of your car, but if we look at it from a different perspective, it's pretty clear if we really care about congestion and about moving people around in a city, the best way to do it is not in a bunch of private cars. And this is a demonstration of a short video that I'm going to show. That's just going to show us, they set it up as a race. We're going to try to move the same amount of people in cars on the left, buses there in red, then trams in the middle, people on bicycles, second to the right lane, and people walking on the right. So which one will move the most people, or move 200 people the fastest? Let's just watch. And that shows you the difference of space that is required, right? You can see the huge difference there. We take off. We're about 31 seconds in. The buses, trams, and pedestrians are all clear. The bicycles take a little bit longer. They require a bit more space, but about 2 minutes. Bikes are all done. And then the cars. And cars at about 4 minutes. So this is just a simple way to show that, if we really care about congestion or about moving people around, what's the fastest, most efficient way to do it? It's probably not people in private cars. So let's talk about Tennessee. And this is an area, I'm here in Washington, D.C. I have, I'm from Southern Indiana though, so I know Tennessee and Nashville a bit, but not nearly as well as you all. So I don't presume to speak, with all the facts on Nashville, but I do know what we have come up with from some of our fatality rates over recent years. We've been looking at it in our Dangerous by Design report that we put out. If you all are interested, check out Dangerous by Design on our Smart Growth America website. And this, we're just going to talk a little bit about what the current situation is and what might be done a little better in Nashville and Tennessee more broadly. So first of all, the situation for road safety in Tennessee is not great. Tennessee is the 11th deadliest state, And actually, this year, Memphis has the unfortunate title of being the most deadly metro area. Nashville is a bit better, but still near to one. You know, it's in the top third of most dangerous metro areas in the country. These are the dots representing 1,333 pedestrian fatalities between 2013 and 2022. And like all states, Tennessee is getting worse over time, not better. And that's a, alarming fact. So this is Nashville itself. Some of you who work closely on these may have seen similar maps, but these are 246 pedestrian deaths in the larger Nashville metro area. And again, that the fatality rate is only getting worse. It's going in the wrong direction, not better. From 2018 to 2022, we don't have 2023 statistics yet. There's always a little bit of a lag between when this data is released. So what does it look like on the ground? So, that was the high level map view. This is the Google Street View. All right. And when you look at some of the streets, some of the places, it's not hard to see why there are some issues with, pedestrian fatalities and general safety in Nashville. So this is one area that's had 7 pedestrian deaths, 2015 to 2020. And if we look at it, again, we see some of the common issues. We've got a very wide, it looks like 6 lanes. I believe this would be an interstate ramp over here. So you've got cars that are trying to get on the interstate. They're very focused on that. They're not looking at pedestrians who are trying to cross a faded crosswalk. Their attention is going to be elsewhere. So you've got a dangerous combination, and that's resulted in lots of fatalities in the last 10 years. Similarly, West Trinity Lane, this is also near an interstate. Got lots of lanes here. Looks like 4 or 5, 6 lanes. So very wide, big highway type road, but then you've also got restaurants and you've got, people living nearby. And literally in this photo, we see people crossing here. And one view is like, well, why are they crossing when there's no crosswalk? Well, I did some Google calculations, and it would take 14 minutes for them to walk to the nearest crosswalk and go across there. To get to the destination. So in a place like this, of course, people are going to take the route that's relatively convenient for them. And without protections, that creates a very dangerous situation. So there have been 7 pedestrian fatalities in this area since 2010. One more. This is Main Street and 7th. Again, we've got, wide highway type looking road, but we've got housing over here on the right. We've got some businesses in the area, few crosswalks, none are visible here. Lots of parking lots, places where cars are going to be coming in and out. And so you have lots of pedestrian fatalities in this area as well, 4 deaths over the last 12 years. So these are some of the, why they do it, what's the situation currently. Now I want to talk about, so what can we do about it? What are the solutions? And, preview, the good news is Nashville is doing some things about it, is starting to work in that direction. That's why we're all on this call today. So there is some momentum, and I'm going to share from our perspective what it takes to really make progress in different ways. So what makes a strong complete streets policy? For us, the initial important first step is to create a policy that's really going to guide how you do complete streets work. So what makes a good one? We have a framework at Smart North America. Our policy framework has 10 elements, and we say these are the 10 things your policy needs to have. I'm not going to go through each of them in detail. That's a different presentation. If you want to know about them, they're all explained on our website. Please check out our Complete Streets Policy Framework or write to me afterwards. I'm happy to talk through them. I'm going to give you a quick look. These are the 10 things that a really good Complete Streets policy does. And so at Smart Growth America, when a city is looking to create a new policy, we say, okay, great, make sure you have these 10 things in it. And then once they have done it, we also do an evaluation. So we have we use this framework to score policies on a score of 1 to 100, basically, to see how well policy is scoring in these different categories. And we also write a report called the Best Complete Streets Policies, where we rank complete streets policies that have come out in recent years. Those are all available on our website. Please check them out. So the good news is Nashville has a policy. Ta-da! Great work to the mayor and his team in the transportation department, who have put a lot of work into this recently released Complete Streets policy, Green and Complete Streets policy, Executive Order number 45. And then to accompany that policy, they have also created an implementation guide. I've been looking at these policies over the last few days, and they're pretty good, frankly. My score, I give them, it's scoring right around 90. There are a few things that we would like to see better, but overall they're very strong. So great first step there. That's a big deal, and it gives you a sort of a place to work from, right? If without a policy, complete streets work may happen in a sort of ad hoc way. Folks, maybe we'll do a project over here, maybe we'll do a project over there, depending on what we have money for or what people are complaining about. And that kind of works. But then maybe the mayor's administration changes, maybe, priorities shift, then things get put on the back burner. And then that was just something we did a few years ago, right? But if you have a strong policy there that really leads to, that really actually makes some changes in the way you do things, that can set you up for sustainable success over time. And the other thing I wanted to point out, sort of clap on, is that Nashville participated in our Complete Streets Leadership Academy in the last few years. And in the Complete Streets Leadership Academy, we work with cities and towns who want to do what are called quick build demonstration projects to really improve on a relatively quick and temporary or experimental basis some new interventions into complete streets. So as anybody who's worked with building or changing streets knows that it's a long process. There's a lot of work that goes into it, and sometimes can take years or decades for a major project. But we encourage folks to get creative, to think about quick solutions that can be done relatively cost effectively, and make a big difference. And this is a project that Nashville has done in recent years. And you can see they've taken a previously relatively dangerous area that has, wide lanes, lots of, businesses and places where people are pulling out in cars, and they have done, added pedestrian refuge island up at the top, as well as completely painted the pedestrian and cycling areas to really highlight and, spotlight people waiting for transit, people walking, people biking. So this is a really cool project. Of course, this is only one. This is a sort of, small scale thing, but if you can replicate this across the city, you can really make some major changes. So what does it actually take to do complete streets? So for us, there are 5 steps, right? And I'm going to just quickly go through them here. First, you got to have the political will, and you got to have some champions and people that really care about this stuff. And I'll say, based on, my interactions with Nashville so far, and based on the robust participation on this call today, I think you got that, right? I really love to see the number of people and the people from across Nashville participating. And that's a really important first step. If people don't care about this issue, things are not going to change. Policies. As I said, you need to get it on the books, right? Talking about it in, in a press statement or in an interview, saying you care about it on a campaign trail is one thing, but actually putting it on the books and saying, no, this is how we're doing things officially, that is a very important thing. So for me, Nashville is right here. You've got the policy, you've got people that care about it. Now you got to put it into practice. And this is, really where the rubber meets the road, paper to pavement, whatever metaphor you want to use. But this is where you really start changing the way you do things, right? Because a policy is a great first step, but it doesn't in itself change things, right? We have seen, unfortunately, some really great policies that just look great on paper, but then they don't lead to actually any change. They sit on a shelf, kind of get forgotten about, rusty and dusty, and don't actually make any change. So for actual action to happen, you need to take the policies to the level of practice, right? So are you actually in your departments, in the way that you're doing things, changing your approach to how you build, redesign, any kind of construction, reconstruction? Are you thinking, no, let's do it in a way that accommodates all users and thinks about their safety and health? And that leads to projects, of course, right? Policies and practices don't really mean much if you're not actually making changes on the ground. So you got to have actual shovels in dirt, things being done. And now what you choose to do, what you choose to prioritize, that's sort of up to you based on what you think should be the top priority. Ideally, you're listening to communities, engaging them, finding out what are their needs, what are their wishes, what are the problems they're seeing, and how can you accommodate them in a way that's going to be safe, equitable for everybody. And when you build enough projects, then you get a network. And that's really the ultimate goal, right? Because having a really great sidewalk over on this side of town or a bike lane over here, well, that's cool. But if it doesn't actually connect you to anywhere, if it doesn't connect to other sidewalks or other bike networks or other communities, well, then it's just an isolated, nice piece of infrastructure, but it doesn't really help people, get around, meet their daily needs. So ideally, we have a network of complete streets where people can, go from their home to school, to work, to a doctor's appointment, to groceries, and do that in a way that's safe, healthy, and dignified. So these are the 5 steps. As I said, I think Nashville has, done some really important work and is building in that direction. But really, what needs to happen now is, yes, we change the processes, do more projects. Some projects are already being done, got to do more, and eventually connect these different projects in the different parts of the city in a really integrated way. And then you've got a complete streets network. So calls to action. So there's a lot of different people on this call. You may be in different places geographically, different places in relation to decision-making power. Everybody, I hope that everyone from this call will come away with a better understanding of what complete streets are and why they're important and what the benefits are. States, this is something that I alluded to earlier. The states have a big role to play, especially when it comes to the state-owned arterials. Now, what exactly to do with them? That's a sort of a political, technical question. A lot of times there can be collaboration between states and cities. There's a push, and a lot of places are pushing for movement to share or completely transfer control of some of those streets back to the cities or municipalities. That's an effective approach that we're seeing in a lot of places. So that can be one approach, but the states definitely have a role to play. Municipalities and complete cities without complete streets policies, create one. So as I said, Nashville has one. If you're listening to this call from somewhere else though, and your city or town does not have a complete streets policy, we encourage you to create one. And if you're stuck on how to do so, check out our website or write to me and we can help you move it along. And for municipalities with complete streets policies, you can implement and improve. So we've seen some great policies out there. We see some cities that are doing really great work, but nobody's perfected it. There's no place in the world, and certainly not in this country, where they've completely solved traffic safety, completely, have completely reached perfection in terms of all things in transportation and complete streets. So there's always room to improve. It's not just we'll create a policy now and then we'll sit back and rest. No, it's constant work, constant improvement, listening to people, listening to communities, talking to, different departments, what's working, what's not. So those are the calls to action that I would encourage for everybody on this call today. And with that, I will wrap up here. Remind you, complete streets are streets for everybody. And if we can, I would like to leave some space for, some discussion, because I've been talking a lot and I'm sure that some of you have some really good ideas and questions. If you have questions for me, I'll try my best to answer. I don't have all the answers in the world, so I'm happy to share what I can. But if there's anybody else on the call who knows the answer to something I don't, I think that would be a cool possibility as well. So there was also a couple of questions in the chat.
Yep. Hey, Dustin, I can read you some of the questions in the chat.
Okay.
This is Diana, by the way, and
Okay.
we can go from there. There was actually a question about what would be best messaging for those who feel that these projects would create gentrification in their neighborhood that would increase their COL to unsustainable levels.
Yeah, and that's a great question and very important. I think, and it's something that's where, as the city goes forward on these things, need to be absolutely conscientious on that front. We point out a couple of things. One is that, the areas, as I started with, with the pedestrian deaths, are definitely more prominent amongst people of color, low-income people, older folks. So the need is greatest in communities that are lower income and often minority communities. So that's so you have to be extra. You should prioritize those areas, but also be concerned about changes that can relate in terms of cost of living to people in those communities. One thing that, we definitely point out, or our stance on this is that's not an excuse not to act. You don't just step back and say, well, we're not going to do anything. You just have to proceed with care, with caution, keeping in mind things like home ownership rates. What are current rents? Rent versus homeownership in an area. Can you accompany, for instance, housing programs along with your transportation interventions, right? So if we're building something over here, can we also work with the housing affordability at the same time to make sure that people that are living there can continue to live there at the same time? I think that's a great way. And again, that takes multiple government departments working together. But it's absolutely it's a real concern and a real question, for sure.
Thank you. We also have another question about, have you seen a good example of a long-term placemaking efforts that are applied to complete street implementation that involve art or some sort of beautification?
Yeah, there are tons of examples. I would point to our website, and check out. We have a whole page. We have a whole page program dedicated to art beautification, placemaking. I'll drop a. Well, no, actually, I'm sharing a screen right now. Check out our website. I would just emphasize that yes, it absolutely can work, and it can work at a lot of different scales. We work with some tiny communities, small towns, in rural areas, or, across the country from the west to the east, all the way up to, we see big cities, New York City, for instance. We saw a lot of interesting work during the pandemic. I don't know how things worked in Nashville, but a lot of cities across the country, such as New York, for instance, decided, you know what, let's try some more open air, open space areas, like with restaurants, for instance, opening up a lot of sidewalk cafes, taking some of the parking spaces that were previously in front of restaurants and converting them to outdoor eateries. And some of them, a lot of them have actually changed and said, okay, well, let's just do this permanently. So that is that's one really cool area. Check out our website on Quick Builds. You saw the example of that Nashville did, with some painting some of the walkways and bikeways. We have a lot of other places that have done that, repainting intersections with really fun and colorful colors. There's a lot of examples.
Yeah, thank you. So right now, we can open this up. If anyone from the participating has a question, if you can please raise your hand in the lower bottom, we will unmute you and let you ask your question of Dustin. Does anybody like to ask a question? Well, I'm not seeing any hands risen.
See,
So
Ed has his hand raised.
all right, can you, Robbie? Can you unmute him?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah,
You are, Ed. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I was on Lafayette yesterday, where they're putting the islands in the pedestrian islands between Napier, Sudicum, and the retail things that are on the other side of the street. The old grocery store that's now Reconnect, I think, is there. That has never had islands, even though there have been plenty of pedestrians there crossing that street. And it took something like Reconnect to get that done, I'm thinking. So I'm wondering if there is any kind of priority guide that you have that says once you do this in an area, or if you already have this in an area, then you start doing things, as opposed to relying on the council person or or people at a meeting or whatever. Is there any sort of guidance that you have in terms of these are the most important problems that we need to address with these various things?
Yes, I think I understand your question. And I would have to say, I'd have to sort of kick it back to the local, what you're seeing, what the biggest problems to safety. There are some, speed, that's a universal thing. I don't care where you go, speed's the problem. But in terms of, is it more one-way streets or is it slip lanes that are causing the most accidents or issues? That's going to be more based on the local situation. But I think you're right. Definitely to kind of look at what people are already doing, or where, yeah, exactly, where people are congregating, where people are crossing. That can definitely be a clue as to where an intervention is needed. The best way to gauge that, you can't just drive around every single street and make observations. So I think including that kind of a consideration in your decision-making process can be useful, as long as it is fair and equitable, and you're not just doing a sort of dashboard scan, right? I think that the best way to do, prioritization of projects is to have multiple different inputs. And I think it's absolutely essential that some of those have strong community opportunities to participate. Some of them are going to be your fatality statistics, where people getting harmed and injured, killed. But other ones, yeah, can definitely be, I don't know, maybe you're doing an internal survey of the department, your staff at the Department of Transportation. Where are they seeing problems, bottlenecks, issues, right? But also other forms of input as well. I think it's having an open mind in terms of where are we going to get our prioritization indicators from.
But there's no guideline that says a grocery store is this many points and fatalities are this many points and number of dwelling units is this many points and the number of people crossing the street is this many points. There's nothing like that. We really need to go ahead and do our own prioritization.
I would encourage you to, yes, I know it's easier if you can just point to, well, this number, this is the threshold for this, but I think that places are so different, right? Nashville versus New York versus, Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, or my hometown of Corden, Indiana, they're going to be very different. We generally point to, refer to NACTO in terms of design standards, how to do things. But in terms of your own prioritization criteria, I would encourage you to put some time and thought into it. Yeah, exactly what you're gonna look for, what you're gonna think about, and do it. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Do we have any other questions?
I see a couple hands up.
Go ahead. We got 5 more minutes. Rock and roll. Who's up? Whose hand's up?
Charlie or Al?
Can you unmute? Either one.
Hey, I'm unmuted. Thank you,
Perfect.
Dustin, for being here. Can you give us just kind of a brief glimpse or summary of what's going to be covered over the next 3 meetings? And then also from anybody probably on the Nashville side, do we have any distinguishing characteristics between a complete street and what the mayor is calling an all-access corridor? Thank you.
Yes, the next 3 meetings. I think, do we have, Diana or Robbie, do we have like a brief about that we could just share out to people?
Yes, we'll get that and we'll get it posted and share it out about the next 3 meetings that we'll be having. So thank you for that. And on the question referencing the distinction about the difference between complete street and the mayor's all access corridors. So the all access corridor is envisioned as a complete street, but we haven't really designed anything. So we have a lot of opportunities in the future to continue that conversation with the community as we move forward through the process. So again, the intent would be to do an all access corridor that is a complete street, but what that looks and feels like, we haven't actually done any design elements or concepts as of yet. And I real quickly do want to share also with the community, we are getting ready to kick off what we're calling a multimodal master planning. Our 3MP is what we refer to it as. And basically that is going to be allowing us to take every plan that's ever been done, and we have that is currently in the system, and put it all together. I like to call it throw it everything in the kitchen sink. And this is what, what WEGO's done, what planning's done, what NDOT's done, and let's put it all together and take a very holistic look at it. Understand what is conflicting, what overlaps, what's you missing, and then have a chance to go out to the community and say, hey, what are we missing from this from a transportation perspective? How do you envision your complete streets to look in your neighborhood so that we're providing access for all, and basically come up with the projects along that. With that, we will actually be designing a prioritization for how we're going to go through and actually prioritize projects to get done. And then that will help us as we move forward with putting together a long range plan and what that funding mechanism would need to be in order to get it built out. So that's something that's going to be forthcoming in the very near future to everybody as we move forward. We do have ways of prioritizing today. We have prioritization tools for like individual plans, but this will be very comprehensive of all plans.
Thank you for that detail. That's really exciting and a very important process.
Yep. So we will get out to everyone, Dustin, an update on the next 3 complete street workshops. We really do appreciate you being here today. Super excited about this. We want to thank everyone who came in and participate. We had a really large number, over 100, so I was super excited about that. And I hope you shared this out with folks. This is open up to everyone. We really want to have the conversation with the community about complete streets and designs and the value that it brings to our community. And I look forward to y'all joining us on the next one. So thank you. Bye, Dustin. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great, everybody.
Everyone have a safe day and a safe week.